We had a Christmas party for 3 different groups of people this year, and one were the real estate agents who referred us business, and there were 38 different realtors who referred us business. Most of that was Louisiana and Mississippi people. So there are people who are smart enough to know there's and I will say this, it was easier to manage and be in a leadership role in a multi-state capacity than it is to sell real estate.
Yeah,
I never did it. I sold a ton of real estate. I never sold a ton of real estate in both places.
Yeah.
It's harder than it was to manage 7 Gardner offices and employees and 200 some odd realtors because it's touching clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome to the In the Arena podcast. My name is Jared Miguez, a co-host on this podcast that brings you the inspiring stories of our clients who are leaders and innovators across different industries in Southeast Louisiana. They are visionary entrepreneurs, savvy real estate professionals, media creators, military business owners, and community champions. And we are going to showcase the remarkable achievements and share their personal stories. Tune in for insightful conversations, valuable lessons, and motivational stories that are going to reveal their secrets to success and offer you insights to help you on your own path. Welcome to In the Arena podcast.
Welcome, everyone. We're excited to have you with us here today on the show. We've got Chip and Herbert here with us. We're excited to have a conversation. Jared, tell everyone a little bit more about them for us.
I mean, beyond them being my buddies, which is probably the top of the list here.
All right.
Chip and Herbert are both generational real estate agents. Herbert specifically, your dad was a real estate broker in Mississippi for a long time, right?
Going to Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Yeah, Mississippi Gulf Coast. And so Herbert's a second generation real estate agent. And then Chip, long line of real estate brokers in your family, fourth generation from the New Orleans area.
That's right.
Yeah.
Representing.
And y'all got a lot of accolades, but I think one of the biggest things y'all are on the who's who in luxury real estate, Board of Regents, which I think is a list that people around here don't know enough about. And it puts y'all at the top of a list of luxury agents that do a lot of volume in that space, which is a big deal. I'm excited to have you on.
Thank you.
Because, we've talked a lot off camera and we've done a lot of stuff together. Actually went to train with you guys on ninja selling and learned a lot about how you do business. And I relate to a lot of how y'all do business too. And I think it's cool that the markets that y'all focus on are ones that me and Courtney spend a lot of time in. So let's talk about that a little bit to get started. So as a real estate agent and broker, being from Mississippi and doing the work that your family has in Mississippi, how does the correlate between this and St. Tammany Parish? How do you manage both of those markets?
Well, we do business from the Jackson County, Mississippi, Alabama line, west of Tangipahoa Parish and on the entire South Shore. And what that footprint represents are the footprints of our family's businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So when my father sold his company, I started working, hanging out with the Gardners. And frankly, a successful St. Tammany Parish is the gateway to to success on the Mississippi Gulf Coast for a multi-state company. And if there's not success in St. Tammany Parish, it's really very difficult to transition from New Orleans to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. So I kind of feel like I kind of felt like it was good for me to start in Slidell because I wore both hats. That was the only multi-state office.
Yeah.
And, Chip and I did some great things together because of that.
Yeah. And I mean, we actually had a conversation this morning with somebody who was talking about how much of a corridor that Slidell is in St. Tammany Parish. I mean, you got 3 major interstates all traveling through that same area. And so you get a lot of traction in both Mississippi Gulf Coast, but even, going up more north to Mississippi too. I mean, people going that way.
Right.
So from your standpoint, being that you're from the South Shore in New Orleans.
From New Orleans, yeah.
Yeah.
When you're from New Orleans, you don't call it the South Shore.
Yeah.
But when you reside on the North Shore, you call it the South Shore. It's one of those conundrums.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Alexandria, so none of it makes sense to me.
It doesn't make
To be
sense to
honest with
anybody. There's a lot of things that we talk about that don't make sense to anybody unless they live in the city of New Orleans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people from New Orleans don't even realize the causeway it goes both ways. It does not just go south.
I had to move over here to really realize that. I believe that. Yeah. So I thought it was only like a one-way ticket, for basically like a special occasion. But it actually does work during normal course of business hours and evenings as well.
They do so much to try to keep the South Shore out of New Orleans that they make you pay to cross going south, but they don't charge you to go north, which is kind of crazy.
People used to make that joke about the West Bank, but then they took away the toll. Like you used to have to pay to get off the West Bank, but they did away with it. So now you can only be North Shore people trying to talk about New Orleans that way.
Yeah.
Well, so I love it because it's like, so I'm born and raised in Slidell. And so I get it that it's, and for some reason he keeps thinking that Slidell is not the North Shore. I'm like, but whatever.
It's kind of northeast shore, but yeah, anyway.
It still applies.
So no, I mean, geographically, it's the northern shore of Lake Pontchartrain. So yeah.
So one time I actually had a woman call in on the radio show on the weekend and asking some question. I think it was whenever we were having a freeze, and she was asking a question. She's like, "Yeah, I'm on the North Shore," and then ultimately we learned she was in Gulfport.
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's not the North Shore, ma'am. Let's have a conversation." She was like, "But I'm north of the shore."
Well, so many people on the Mississippi Gulf Coast watch the New Orleans news.
Yes.
So they translate themselves to the North Shore when it's really not. It's not.
Exactly. And so, but one of the things I love about that is, so I'm born and raised in Slidell, but both of my parents are from 15 minutes from Slidell, small town, Pearlington. They're from Mississippi. And a lot of people don't realize, one, how close it is. They don't realize that, especially in Slidell, there's a lot of that, people license in both parts, or they do business or they service, just because that state line is right there.
Yeah. And there's a lot of the magic in your mother's career was she was she was one of the staples of banking on Mississippi Gulf Coast. But the magic was she worked for the New Orleans name brand. And that's kind of what happened to me when I went to Gardner Realtors. I was the name brand on Mississippi Gulf Coast, and I went to work for the New Orleans name brand, and it worked out well for everybody involved.
Well, that's the funny thing. A lot of people don't know. Most people actually don't know that my mother's in the industry. She's a lender for a bank.
She's a humble lady.
So we call her Mayor of Maryland because she's on every board. I mean, you've met her, board of directors, all these different things. She's just about a year from retiring now, and I'm trying to bring her in house. But a lot of people don't know that. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
She was one of the first female presidents of the Hancock County Rotary Club. Did you realize that?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, she's very humble, and she's after 5 p.m. she kind of shuts. She separates work and life a lot differently than.
Good for her.
That's the benefit of being on the lending side of real estate, not the sales side.
Well, but she's also and sometimes she'll do that, but she's also within a bank versus like a mortgage broker or something outside of it. But so I can appreciate that, right? And I think there's something to be said. The Mississippi and Louisiana real estate industry culture are very different. At least, so when I started buying properties over there a handful of years ago, I was like, man, so obviously laws are different. Obviously now you're not dealing with parishes, you're dealing with counties, you're dealing with different things, but there's just a whole different culture over there. What was it like for you coming from, New Orleans, working over there for your first few transactions?
Well, I'm glad I had Herb along my side to help guide me through it. So,
he also can be humble. He tries to be funny when he's humble, but he's very.
Oh yeah, no, that's the truth. I mean, because what you're seeing now, so while the family's history of the market growing into the Gulf Coast, right, of Mississippi, with COVID, that has really just added fuel to the fire with the amount of growth over there and the amount of population shift.
So over there being the Mississippi Gulf Coast, from major growth.
Yeah, Bay St. Louis, Waveland to Ocean Springs, right, to the Alabama line to the Louisiana line. And with that, a lot of agents in the marketplace, we have always understood the benefits of being duly licensed family businesses, right, doing. And that wasn't the norm pre-COVID. Post-COVID, people have said, "Hey, we saw some outbound migration from the city of New Orleans.
Yeah.
That was a lot. Things were wide, free, open, and clear. Right? People were having fun on weekends when things were locked down here.
Sure.
All those things stayed in people's minds. That and other reasons, and economic reasons now, such as the state of Mississippi being on a path to no state income tax. Okay, there are a lot of reasons, but now real estate agents that used to never even look at it over there or sneeze at like doing business over there,
right,
now they're saying, oh well, I kind of am losing out, right? So they're just trying to learn how to do these things.
The bottom line, frankly, it's too easy to be a real estate agent to get that license. It's too easy to be a real estate broker to get the license, and I don't think a lot of people realize the responsibility. I mean, if you come across a commission and it's obvious to them you don't know the difference in the law, both of them will come down pretty hard, and they should. They should.
Yeah, I mean, you say it all the time. I mean, even the vendors that you work with, you expect them to understand the language between the Mississippi and Louisiana transaction because you're going to have just the professionalism, but also not making the mistakes. And the clients feeling like they can trust you and the vendor means that the difference between the two laws and speak the language and be able to get the deal done right.
Well, so it's huge. So obviously, so I just had a conversation earlier this week. Someone who sent paperwork with a deed of trust for here in Louisiana, and I'm like, tell me you're not from here. You know what I mean? Like little things like that. But so on my end, even on the pre-foreclosure world, I mean, it is almost quicker to foreclose than to evict in Mississippi versus in Louisiana, it's very different. And so it absolutely was a learning curve for me. My mother talks about how it was a learning curve when Whitney Bank, when she went from downtown New Orleans to the Waveland office.
Yep.
Mr. Dusty Rhodes, bless his soul, he's no longer with us, but he would always put his hand and said, Marilyn, stop running. Because she was used to, being in a two-piece suit with heels, and at lunch she would put tennis shoes on because she was just going.
Yeah.
And they were like, slow the pace down, So it's not only just different laws, different things, but like just, I guess, the speed of business. There's a lot of nuances. There's culture down there that's very different than in New Orleans.
And I find it much easier to do business on the Mississippi Gulf Coast than in Metro New Orleans. I really do. There's less people vying for it. It's more conducive to serve the client well. I mean, it's much easier to serve the client well on the Mississippi Gulf Coast because there's not so many people involved in the.
You having the credibility of being the second generation real estate agent that was formed in Mississippi. I think that's a big part of you having the ability to say that, right?
Well, I'm going to tell you what the gift for me is I had the opportunity to learn how to do business in Mississippi from my dad.
Yeah.
Okay. And he did a long time before I was around. And then when I started learning how to do things in Louisiana, I learned from the Gardners. Yeah. So I feel like I can wear both hats well. And that's a gift and a blessing. But it is quite different.
And him riding your coattails is because you have the ability to work both sides, right?
Here's the thing. The reason this works well for Chip and I is because our gifts and talents are in different places. I mean, I transacted a ton of real estate before I really ever considered or thought about Gardner Realty. Mm-hmm. And I was 1% of Coldwell Banker agents internationally. And then I became Gardner. I would not have been the leader I was if I had not gone to Gardner Realty. I would not have been the agent that I was if I wasn't trained by Patsy Dubuisson, who also is no longer here, God rest her soul.
Which is interesting. Your experience comes from a foundation of actually being a real estate agent, right? Like that's how you started your career. For your dad was the leadership, but
right. But I never thought I wanted to be in leadership. Sure. I never paid much attention to it, and I did it well because I didn't have much of an option.
Yeah.
I did it well because I had to. But I knew how to do it. But I had no desire to be in leadership until.
On the flip side, right, you go with the Gardners, who your whole family you were leading and running a company that your great grandmother had. Great grandmother, yeah. So tell us about that. So what was your start to the business? Did you do actual production as an agent, or did you kind of step into leadership early on?
So let me answer this question. The start to my business was the first time my mother took me into our uptown office on Maple Street. So I was Glenn Gardner, and my mom did not want to start calling me Mini Glenn or whatever after my dad. So someone goes, he's just the Chip off the old block. So you call me Chip Gardner. Mm-hmm. Like I got my name in our uptown office as a kid.
Which is a beautiful office, by the way.
It is. So, So our family did a great job with that one. So Ladder and Bloom has a great facility with it right now. So with that, born into the business like Herbert, like he likes to say, I didn't choose real estate chose me. I say it's in my DNA. Mm-hmm. It's in my blood. Like it's who I am. While I thought about trying to do different things in life, everything kept pulling me back. And when I say try to do different things in life, I mean talking like internships. Because my entire career from the time I was out of school, all my degrees like finance, business, finance, economics, MBA in real estate finance, like everything has always led me on a path to real estate, like the education to back it up. So going back to like just your question about the path, like Herbert and I, that's where compliments had different paths because when I got out of school, I've always worked in real estate, but I worked more for like an investment bank with institutional clients.
Chip is very humble. Chip was a vice president at Duff & Phelps, which is the leader in evaluation. And he evaluated real estate all over the world, billions and millions of dollars. And he came home at the invitation of his father, not because he needed a job. I mean, Chip is humble too.
Yeah, so it was fun. My dad finally called me up, and he's like, "If there was ever time for you to come home, now's the time." And that was like, and then so when I got brought home, it was when our family was dropping. We were an independent family company for 58 years. We were the Prudential franchisee for the region for 11 years, and my dad knew it was time for us to separate from the franchise system and world, and it was to take our family's business back to being independent and to buy out our minority interest business partners at the time. So I got to lead us through that. And then, as Herbert said, like when he had some changes in his life, and that's when he joined our family's business. And then, he was the top producer. He came over with a ton of listings, which we were very grateful for. It made a difference to the bottom line of that office. So thank you very much, Herbert.
Yeah.
And with our market share percentages,
It was mutually beneficial.
it was. But then,
sounds like great strategy though too.
yeah, for sure. But then when Herbert came by, when he talks about like leadership, I mean, like at the end of the day, you have to be passionate to want to go in the management or leadership side of the business. Cause like the pitch isn't that great. It's like, hey, Herbert, do you want to work even more hours and make less money? We'd really appreciate if you came and were part of our management team. That's not a pitch that typically works for most entrepreneurs.
I said no until Mr. G called.
Yeah.
Until he got involved.
He told me, he denied, he had no problem telling me no a couple of times that he was not interested. And then my dad had a conversation with him and he reconsidered. So,
Pretty influential person I've heard.
Yeah.
It was my mentor, my buddy.
Well, there's something I love about that. It's that you guys are standing on the shoulders of some strong foundation, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's huge because most people don't have that, right? And I think that's something that, number one, if it's underestimated, it's a level that people aren't seeing, that you guys you have that one experience of seeing it when you were growing up or learning from them, but it's also, there's a level there that it's the way that they did business. So you're getting to see the good and the bad and the ugly.
Yeah.
So and so I think that's huge. I mean, there's so many people who, they got in the business 2 or 3 years ago, and maybe they've done some volume since then, but like, again, there's something to that legacy, the decades that you guys stand upon.
I say every day, especially when somebody says thank you or we've done a good job. I say, every day, Chip and I go to work with the very clear understanding that our actions, behaviors, and performance affect the legacy of Gertrude Gardner, Glenn Gardner, and Herbert Patsy Dubuisson. And that's some pretty nice motivation to do what you're supposed to do and do it well and take care of people. Yeah. I'm not gonna screw things up after when you combine it as 130 years of service excellence to the communities that our family's company served. I'm not going to screw that up on one transaction, I promise.
Yeah.
Well, that's
not
huge because not everyone cares about reputation, right? Because some people can be so transactional that they're short-sighted. Mm-hmm. But you guys obviously have a long view of this, not only looking back, but looking forward. And that's huge. You guys care about reputation. Obviously, you have strong reputations, but it's also one of those things, again, there's other people that are in the industry and they're like, hey, I don't care about this one deal, as much.
One deal, one transaction, one client. That's not how you achieve long-term success in real estate or any related industry. It's a lifetime of relationship business.
Yep.
And if my mom used to say, there is no amount of money that I would ever consider breaking the law or doing a client wrong. A couple $100 million of unmarked bills, and we might have a thought here. But there's nothing that my broker's license is worth because it's irreplaceable, and so is my reputation.
Yeah, and everything is long game mentality, and it's not like something like our parents sat us down and said, "You got to think long term, long game." But it's the way you operate as a real estate agent, broker, or the way certain companies operate. Like there's title companies that operate, investors that operate, whatever. But when you have people that teach you the path of the right way to do things and how, at the end of the day, like we used to always say when I was on the management or leadership side, like when we ever have issues with clients or whatever, it's like at the end of the day, we're going to make things right. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so it's pretty simple. Like when you do the right thing, like the path lays itself out and you have a lot less baggage in life because you're not having to keep up with your schemes.
Exactly.
No.
Well, and so that's huge. So even in the business world, and I can appreciate your background, so you've got the legacy companies like, GE, P&G, the people who've been around for a long time, that the way they operate business or the things that they do, it's just, there's more that goes into it than people realize versus the people who are like, hey, can I just catch this trend? Something's really, and so going back to your conversation, you guys having deep roots in the South Louisiana and South Mississippi regions, there's a level there that you get people who might have jumped on the trend of, well, the coast is getting hot. You know what I mean? But that's no match to you guys' experience and your roots. And so I think that's something that is important because with your clientele, it's saying, hey, look, do you want the person who just got licensed so that they could, handle because maybe they live in Slidell and every now and then they were getting someone in Mississippi, but maybe they don't want to spend the time investing in Mississippi to understand it, to understand not only just the laws and like the technicalities with real estate, but also the culture.
We had a Christmas party for 3 different groups of people this year, and one were the real estate agents who referred us business, and there were 38 different realtors who referred us business. And most of that was Louisiana and Mississippi people. So there are people who are smart enough to know there's and I will say this, it was easier to manage and be in a leadership role in a multi-state capacity than it is to sell real estate.
Yeah,
I never did it. I sold a ton of real estate. I never sold a ton of real estate in both places.
Yeah.
It's harder than it was to manage 7 Gardner offices and employees and 200 some odd realtors because it's touching clients.
Yeah.
So
2 things. Like, I'll say this, we'll transition from the management side of what y'all have done and move into y'all's production now. But the story I tell everybody, we've known each other for a while, but me and you and Herbert went to South Mississippi when we walked into that office over there.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this. One of the things I thought was the most impressive thing about you and your family is that clearly the apple didn't fall far from the tree, because I've heard great things about your grandmother. I've heard great things about your dad. When we walked into that office, a lady walked up to us and started telling us a story about something that was going on in their family. And I don't know how often you've seen the lady, but she's in the Bay St. Louis office. I mean, you may not have seen a lady for half a year. And whatever y'all were talking about was obviously important to her. And y'all stopped and y'all started saying a prayer together. You prayed with her in that moment about whatever was going on in her life. And I just thought that was pretty amazing that the culture within your family stuck to that many generations, to where an agent and one person walked up to you who you've hadn't seen in a while, and y'all had a moment to the point where y'all actually sat there and you cared enough to pray over her and help her whatever she was going with. So
yeah, I remember that, Jared.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive. I've told a lot of other people that story because I think it is a good testament to who you are and who your family is as a person. So that was great.
Well, let me say one thing on that. So it goes back to like, if we were to talk about like impactful, like, advice that people have given us, well, like my dad, if there was one phrase that he drilled into me, and Herbert got to experience it as well, along anyone that worked on the management side or leadership side of our family's businesses, people don't care how much you know until they know that you care. Mm-hmm. Okay. But that was my dad's biggest thing. No one cares if you think you're smart, if you have all these degrees, if you don't care about people, right? What's going on in their family, meeting them where they are, like loving on them when they need love, like having empathy, being able to relate to their struggles. Like that commission check might be exactly what they need to pay their mortgage that month to, do anything. Like if you can't relate to your people at that level, then you're in the wrong business.
Yeah.
And it's not like relate because you have to. It's relating because that's who you are. Mm-hmm. And because real estate agents, just like people, they're smart and they can sense whether it's sincere or if it's fake. Mm-hmm. And, when you truly care, like, I'm not someone that goes around just praying for everybody. Okay. But when you meet people with where they are and where people are in life, that's very powerful. And, like while we haven't been in this like management or leadership roles now for a couple of years, because we're truly client service and client focused. It's once you've had that experience, it's not that you can't turn it off. It's, you are not a good real estate manager or leader unless you have those traits. Yeah. So just because like that's not how we earn our living anymore, it doesn't mean that you can just flip the switch and not care about people anymore. Yeah. Right. Because if so, that just proves that you weren't doing it for the right reasons before.
Right. Yeah. And frankly, the skills and gifts and talents it takes to be a great real estate agent are the same gifts, skills, and talents it takes to be a good real estate broker and long-term success. And it's just like you said, we started talking about ninja selling. I mean, when we took ninja selling, I took ninja selling a long, long time ago, right? Taken 12 times, I think, plus when you add some leadership stuff to it, it starts to look more like 50. I've lost count, okay? But the first time I looked at a leadership manual, I went to the trainer and I said, "This is sales." And he said, "It's just a different client, Herbert. They're all people." Yeah, that's what it is. 100%. I mean, I wish I could say I was brilliant. I'm not, but caring about people, truly caring about people, client, real estate agent, whoever, is an important trait in this business.
Yeah. So Chris Voss, the author, him and Jocko Willink had a podcast one time, and one of them said intent has a smell. And I think that goes with this, right? When you can tell if someone's either being, short-sighted or, long-sighted, if they care about you, if they don't care about you, you can tell from a mile away.
Right.
And so I think that's huge because, people are going to pick up and people are going to do, whether it's vendors, whether it's other real estate agents, whether it's clients, you start learning, who plays well with other people, plays well in the sandbox with other people. Yep. So I think that's critical. So I'd love for us to talk about on the production side with y'all with clients. I know you said you had some questions.
Yeah. And so one more thing to piggyback off of that, the leadership side of it. And I had a guy come in one time and we were talking about leadership. He was a former special operations guy in the military, and he studied. I think I had a video on social media about this, and he studied through 10 years of being no longer than that, 20 years of being in the military, and he came up with the idea that leadership equals love. And it took him a long time to get there, but I think you're right. Like being able to go where your people are at and understanding and love in a way of loving them whenever they need it, caring and all those things too, but also hard and tough love and being able to have a hard conversation with somebody when they need to hear a hard conversation. So.
Well, my great-grandmother would agree with you, Jared, on that synopsis, because while my dad always had that saying, the quote from my great-grandmother is, it all simmers down to love. Mm-hmm. Love of God, love of your family, love of your business, just love, right? So it's like, it all goes hand in hand because it's the way you treat people. And that's fascinating to hear about a guy that was literally in the military leadership, and that's his take as well.
He had a couple takes, and it took a couple of times for him to figure it out, and that's what he whittled it down to, was just genuinely loving the people that you're involved with in life, and you'll end up making a bigger impact and being more influential if you lead with love, which is pretty cool.
There's no doubt.
So from production standpoint, I've read a ton of real estate books that teach real estate agents how to be successful, and you've talked about ninja selling ever since I've met you. And if you don't know anything about it, or you haven't studied the book, you can think like, okay, what is this whole thing about? After going to the class one time, 100% believe that is how you generate business.
Well, it's like I said yes because Glenn called and asked me to come visit after I was happy to tell Chip and his HR director no twice.
He likes to say that a lot.
Glenn Gardner and ninja selling. That's what led me to say yes to.
Yeah.
So, I took ninja selling as a Coldwell Banker agent at the Coldwell Banker International Convention as a byproduct of that, and then went to Gardner Realtors. Okay. When I found out Gardner Realtors was going to become a ninja company, I mean that was it. I mean it changed the ballgame for me, and frankly, it didn't matter what the salary was. It didn't matter because I just wanted to be a part of what changed my life. And I'm like, look, we can drive. I can make money. We can drive listings, and ninja selling will help us all make more money. So let's go get it. Let's go get after it because this is going to be great.
Yeah.
I mean, but ninja is a lifestyle at every level. It's your life. I mean, it's not just sales.
There's no better way to. I mean, I try to explain it to people all the time, and they really don't they can't wrap their brain. And again, this is from being genuine, right? You said genuinely care about people. It's something that's intrinsically built inside of you. I think that ninja selling plays to people who genuinely care about other people, because that's what it's about. I mean. EOS mentions it a little bit. Gino Wickman's whole Traction series, he talks about doing business with people that you love. Mm-hmm. But I think that ninja selling teaches you how to actually stay in front of and create systems around staying in front of people that you love, so you can do business and serve them and help them grow in whatever way they want. And
who can you do a better job with than somebody you care about?
100%. But so knowing that that's the foundation for your business, I don't think there's a better way to sell you guys as real estate agents as more than to say, if you treat your clients the way that book teaches you to treat your clients are going to be satisfied and happy, and you're going to attract business to you instead of. And it's kind of a tricky title because you're truly not selling yourself.
Absolutely not.
You're adding value and adding value and adding value, being selfless and loving on your people to the point that they are attracted to being your friend.
Yeah.
And then you wait for the opportunities to add value in the real estate world. You're not leading with that.
So I'm going to say this. I'm the only one at the table who has not done ninja selling.
There you go.
I have the book. Someone gifted it to me. And
Did I give it to you?
No. But so I've had it. But from what I'm hearing, it goes along the vein. I love a lot of like Zig Ziglar, You get everything you want in your life. You open up, people get.
There's a lot of Zig Ziglar in ninja selling.
Good old Mississippi man. And right. So that's my ethos, right? So I love that. So it might just get bumped up my list.
That's amazing.
You should definitely read Ninja Selling. And Larry Kendall, the author, wrote it in small chapters because he knew if he did put more than 3-4 pages in a chapter, real estate agents would not read it. So there's a great bunch of chapters, but it's not that many pages. So take a chapter a day. You can read it while you're reading another book very easily.
Well, and so I love that, but it's huge because I think when it comes down to people are driven by basically their philosophies around business, life, right? Like or for example, how you show up as a human is, a synopsis of your philosophies around, well, how should you treat other people, things like that. And it bleeds over into your business. And so I love that.
Yeah. And I will go into the class with these guys and doing it with them. I think it would have done a whole nother level for me in perspective because, I mean, I got to hang out with Mr. Larry and meet him and see him and talk to him and other.
Not everybody has the experience you had the first time. Jerry.
Not everybody gets to go to his office and see his office either.
Yeah, you're a special person. Yeah, no. Larry Kendall's the man.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. And so from a production standpoint, how do y'all function as a team, right? So what value do you bring for your listings and your buyers and your sellers? Tell us about y'all's team and how y'all grow and how y'all work on y'all's files.
Well, Chip and I do everything together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we divide and conquer at times. Like if there's something, and typically if there's something that needs to be handled on the Mississippi Gulf Coast and we can't go together, I go. If there's something that has to be handled in New Orleans, and we can't go together, Chip goes because those are the core markets.
Sure.
But I mean, we operate as, and it's not a team. It's the three of us basically, right? It's one assistant and Chip and I, and everything is hands on. And I don't want to take on any more than that. But it's we are a group. Yeah. But we pretty much operate as a single agent because our hands are in every file. Both hands are in every file.
Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't piggyback on that?
Well, I mean, it's just been fun. I mean, like last year was our true first full calendar year doing this together, right? With our transitions in life. And like Herbert and I pulled off like being top 50 in the greater New Orleans area of all the real estate agents like in our first full year. So I mean, it was great. And
especially with last year, like
Cassie Dubuisson and Gardner would expect nothing less.
Yeah. Exactly.
Again, they'd expect the shoulders are standing on.
We would be saying how we could have done a little bit more.
And my wife and Herbert's wife, they expect more out of us. Okay, but
you wouldn't be standing here if you didn't expect a lot of yourselves as well.
Exactly.
So you got to get. So there's that.
Yeah,
too.
and because for us, like production isn't about production. It's just about like how many clients can we serve, right? Because we focus on how many clients we can serve at any given time with effective to achieve all of our like mutual goals. But we're excited because I mean, like Herbert and I have plans. Like not just like top 50, but make our way in the top 20, then our top 10, and like what that'll look like. Just because our business is going to keep exponentially growing amongst those three markets. Because as we said, hey, it's the city of New Orleans and the suburbs like Metairie, right? Then it's the North Shore and the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Because with our experience, I don't know many groups. I really I'm biased, but we do it the best. There's not many people that can touch all three markets.
That's
there's some
very, very
there's
true.
some good agents out there that specialize in this one market or this one neighborhood, right? But there are very few people that have the levels of experience that we do and feel comfortable literally across the 10 parish region in Louisiana and across the 6 counties of the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Well, and I think that has to do with owning and operate companies. I didn't do anything more for my family than sell real estate.
Yeah.
But my dad owned part of Coldwell Banker Alfonso, the largest real estate company on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. So when you own part of the biggest in Mississippi and you watch it be operated and you participate in operating the largest and most successful in Metro New Orleans, I mean, it's a lot of moving parts that we get because doing it is a lot easier than keeping everybody safe in an 850 agent company doing it.
Well, so I mean, not that I want to get into too much detail about intricacies about what's going on in the market right now.
Right. Before we jump on that, I think it's a really critical part to talk about the 3 different areas because I think you're about to change. I think that's huge. So I'm born and raised on the North Shore, but in Slidell. Mm-hmm. And so I started buying investments in that, New Orleans, Covington, that area, and that. Then I started going into like the Hammond area, stuff like that. But then when I started buying New Orleans, whole different. You can smell the difference between a North Shore agent and a South Shore agent, between who knows how to inspect a well and septic and who does like the snake. They do the plumbing for the plumbing inspection, right? So when someone from the South Shore is like has a client on the North Shore, and then they're like, they're doing a plumbing inspection on a house that doesn't need it. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, like, you're from the South Shore, aren't you? Right, and vice versa. things like that. So you can see that. But then even when I started buying, my first purchase in Mississippi was 31 properties on the coast from a guy who wanted to get out of the business. And I was like, great, this is going to help me like build my team easier. And then I was like, what the heck did I do?
Yeah.
Well,
because life is so different there.
Hancock County, Mississippi, and even Pass Christian, Bay St. Louis, Waveland, Diamond Head, and Pass Christian are a suburb of New Orleans, just like Hammond and Covington. I mean,
People don't realize
25%
it,
of the professional population of Hancock County, Mississippi, drive to downtown New Orleans to go to work every day, just like it happens in Metairie. Absolutely. I mean, more people read the Times-Picayune than the Clarion Ledger in Bay St. Louis on Sunday morning.
How long is it drive from there to New Orleans?
Hour and 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, if you hit traffic. I mean, and depending on how fast you drive.
Yeah.
If I left Bay St. Louis, I could be on Canal Street in 48 minutes if I didn't hit any traffic. But I put my cruise control on 87 most days, so it just depends. There's such a New Orleans influence, and so much of the real estate business there is secondary home ownership of waterfront property. And there's basically 4 segments of population that come from there. New Orleans being the biggest, Baton Rouge, Hattiesburg, and Jackson. It's like, so Jordan River Shores in the Kill on on the Jordan River, that's Metairie on the weekend.
Yeah.
And so is Timber Ridge.
Right.
In Pastor Chan.
Well, and those things are huge. And so, I mean, and then obviously with the Secret Coast thing and a lot of the publication it's gotten over the years. I mean, Air DNA, which is big for the, data. I don't know if you guys saw the report that Air DNA put out.
I did.
Air DNA is a big data platform for Airbnb. And maybe 2 years ago, they put out some of the top markets in Biloxi and Gulfport. And then Bay St. Louis
led the United States. Yeah,
we're there.
Led the United States.
And then, I mean, those things are huge, right?
I read it in the magazine. I didn't know the name of the platform.
No, you're good. But then I had people calling me from all these different states being like, hey, do you know where such and such is? I was like, yeah. I mean, I stepped on a catfish bone on the beach there.
About these different states, I mean, Herbert and I had buyers, a family from California that we helped buy a condo there, a family from Wisconsin. And these are people that own properties in other parts of the country. I mean, it's not just their primary. One was their secondary. One was like their third property. Right. But I mean, like, and it's like, it's always interesting. How'd you hear about it? It's like, they talk about, they read somewhere online, they found this about the affordability, and after like,
the secret's not such a big secret anymore.
Yeah. Right. I mean, like, but I mean, so when you're interacting with families from California, like the north and the east, that are happy to be here and buy a place literally on the water for $500,000 or whatever that looks like, those are grateful people and they enjoy the lifestyle.
And if Mississippi does go toward the no income tax, I can only see that growing.
They reduced it not this legislative session, but the last legislative session was a tremendous cut in the state income tax rate.
So that's going to help. But if they ultimately get toward a path of that, I think it's just going to add fuel to the fire.
That's the way I've been describing it. There's a path that's laid out, right? It's not the inverse. It's not increasing, right? No one's saying it's going down to zero. But the path is there for it to be, and people have noticed it, right? So one of the big things that we have going on with our clients, friends that you just see what's happening, is people that used to think of their place as their secondary property because they use it on the weekends or whatever, are really switching where they're now in the process of making a lot of those primary residences.
With insurance and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah. Like moving home, auto, umbrellas, everything related to that.
Yeah.
If they were based in New Orleans, like mine used to, they see premiums dropping significantly.
Exactly.
Then they're looking at downsizing or switching where they live in the city of New Orleans, right? Based upon those items. So, I mean, there is a shift that is going on. Like it's not everyone going from New Orleans to the North Shore, New Orleans to Mississippi,
It started during COVID. Some people went all over the country.
There continues to be a lot of movement, right?
Well, so in the investing world, there's a lot of benefits to real estate. One of them is appreciation. We've never really had that in a strong way in Louisiana, like to a degree, right? Like give it a little bit more time, stretch it out a little bit further and you still see it in the sense. But the Mississippi Gulf Coast has seen it in a way.
Yes.
But I tell investors all the time, don't go there, expecting it, right? Yeah. Like appreciation should always be a cherry on the top. It should be lagniappe. It should not be like the sole focus, right? But as an investor myself, one of the reasons I went to Mississippi was because, so again, a lot of my stuff doesn't get crazy amounts of appreciation here, but if I can go make a deal work over there,
Yeah.
I would like to see that benefit over time.
So let's talk about appreciation right now. So of the things, since we're here, like that separate Herbert and I compared to like talking to your average real estate professional, is like we actually really know the numbers. We look at them monthly. You know, we do things with our clients like real estate reviews where we're sitting down and talking about like real estate holdings in Louisiana versus real estate holdings in Mississippi. Like both of us could tell you right now, over the past 4 quarters, the rate of appreciation in the state of Louisiana has been about 1%.
Right.
Yeah.
The rate of appreciation in the state of Mississippi was 10%.
So I believe 4% is the national average or something
Correct.
along those lines. So at 1%, it's like nothing to write home about in Louisiana, right?
We're basically
below
flat.
average. Yeah, we're flat. But then to see the 10,
Correct.
again, I'm not saying people go run for the hills and all go buy everything, but like when I bought those 31 properties, I got a sweetheart of a deal.
Yep.
Right? And I mean, like, it was crazy.
Mhm.
But I said, hey, this is a long-term play, that it's in the path of progress. I'm not betting on anything because the numbers work today, right?
Yeah.
And
that's literally lanyard for you, because if the numbers work
lanyard.
today and you know that the strong appreciation, but that's where people are looking, right? So like one of the things that like what our clients appreciate, and this is on the residential and the commercial side, because that's one thing, is Herbert and I do both, right? I mean, you know,
Well,
yeah,
do
for
both
sure.
well. A lot of people
And
do
we
both.
have commercial clients that tell us that they prefer working with us compared to someone else they use, because we have a different perspective, because we really see how the population shifts in the movement in the market, which plays into the commercial realm. Where, you know, retail follows rooftops, right? Well, when there's change in the way the household formation and the changes are going, and you see where these paths are,
Well,
Sure,
right?
like
and the National Association of Realtors just did a poll. More people moved to Texas and Florida than any other state. The rest of the states combined. More people there. The number 3 was Mississippi.
Wow.
So the
Interesting.
path, okay, no income tax had a lot to do with that. There were other factors, no doubt, but no income tax. So the number 3 was the state trying to go to no income tax.
Well, so I do think that those things are important, because even on a residential side, like your primary residence, man, I know a lot of folks who they're strategically looking at, obviously with the insurance crisis we're in, which I know there's blend over into Mississippi because
Yeah.
carriers in general are having issues, but there's something to be said. I mean, auto insurance, various things. But then for a long time, the argument was some amenities and things, but they're coming.
Yeah.
And those are things, I mean, we're seeing, obviously, Bay St. Louis, we saw what happened with that. We're starting to see the various things that are coming to where you're seeing, you're not necessarily doing major trade-offs.
Well, and look, so the amenities are coming. Some of them are there. Some of them are leaving New Orleans. Here's the thing: the economic health of the city of New Orleans is going to control the real estate market in some way, from Mobile, Alabama, to Lafayette, or maybe even Houston. I mean, you know, it's people like, oh, I'm moving. I mean, New Orleans needs to be strong for the rest of the state, and that's a reason to thrive. So we watch that every day, and you know, that's, I've been watching it my whole life because the way my business was. But it's I guess the whole point is this: you got to know stuff like that to serve clients well, and not
it's
many
huge.
people are paying attention to it.
Well, no, so information is huge, right? So when someone comes and say, "Hey, I'm about to buy I'm about to buy an Airbnb in New Orleans," I'll be like, "What is
Why?
it zoned? And
Why?
have you been under a rock?" You know.
Yeah.
And but that's often when someone who's not from the area, who's ill-informed, and again, that goes down to, you know, choosing strategically who you use.
We just talked a lady
Yeah.
out of buying an investment of Airbnb in New Orleans.
Yeah, so if everyone thinks real estate agents, real estate brokers are all about the sale, like when you're saying that, we were laughing in our heads because literally we got a
Give us 6 months and see how things.
a referral from another part of the country. We're like, listen, like we trust like the person who referred you to us. Last thing we want to ever do is make a sale at your detriment. Like right now, the best spot for you to be is on the sidelines.
Yeah, watching away.
And then when we tell you it's time to write an offer, we'd love to do that for you. But now's not the right time. It's
Anybody
like, wow.
who's trying to sell somebody a property in the city of New Orleans is going to be Airbnb. I mean, I would worry about that.
Yeah.
So those things are huge, and that's, you know, not to dive into a deeper conversation.
That's for another time.
But it's speaking of knowledge of the marketplace.
Yep.
So that's huge, again, when it comes to working the 3 very different areas, right? Again, talking about even if you have a South Shore agent who's like, hey, let me help you buy this house on the North Shore that has a septic system. And they're like, what do you even do, right? Again, there's a point to that where that education, that experience matters. And then to have it in the 3 areas, I think that is important because people move within the 3.
I think but Chip and I can handle. I don't know that there are some things going to be thrown at us in the 3 markets that one of us hasn't already handled.
Yeah. Well, from a leadership standpoint and from an agent standpoint, I mean, you got to see hundreds of agents doing deals all the time and advising them. I think that was a big deal. So before we wrap up, I always ask this question. I'm going to ask it to Chip. So, being that you're a 4th generation real estate agent, if your son came to you and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to be a real estate agent," what would you tell him?
I would pause for a second because I'd think through it. And at the end of the day, I would encourage him to. I mean, I love what I do because in a capitalist society, right? What better form of entrepreneurism is there? Whether it's being a real estate investor, being an agent that helps investors, helps people buy homes. Our industry continues to evolve, but I firmly believe there's always going to be the role of the broker, right? Meaning the person that advises, just as, we're going to continue to have financial advisors, CPAs, because we're a professional service, right? I think there's going to be a heck of a lot. I'll say, son, you're going to have a lot less competition because the way people see real estate agents today and the way this industry is headed is there's going to be a lot less of agents in the future, but the ones that are going to thrive are the cream of the crop, right?
Yeah.
So I would absolutely encourage it because, not only can you earn your living but it provides the path to truly building wealth when you're the investor alongside. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'd be excited about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in the family business, and one of the biggest things I've messed with Herbert. I was like that I'd miss was having my son be involved in it, but it's having involved in something that just looks a little different right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to everything you said in that. I hope that one day one of my kids can take over my business and learn how to be an attorney and how you can impact the real estate market from my standpoint, because there's so many avenues. We're all sitting in different places.
That's the thing. 4.5 million people moved 2 years ago. 4.5 million people moved last year. 4.5 million people would move this year. There'll be 30% less real estate professionals next year, and the people will still move. And a real estate transaction, there are literally 100 hands that touch it.
Yeah,
it is the engine of the American economy.
Yeah,
we get to play a role in that. It's pretty special when you break it down like that.
100%.
So Herbert, for you, talk to me about the legacy that you want to leave on the industry. What does that look like for you?
And this is not a joke. I told Chip this the other day. I said, part of the problem is this: we don't dress professionally anymore. We don't act professionally anymore. We don't answer the damn telephone. And we may be the last great hope in our region.
So how do people get in touch with you guys if they want to get in touch with you guys?
www.chip-herbert.com or our telephone numbers.
Yeah.
We can put them in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll share that with everybody so they can get in touch with you guys. And we didn't get to get into this, but I know y'all do a lot on social media, so I know that they can just go to y'all's social media, Facebook, Instagram, send you a message and get in touch with you there. And y'all do great videos.
If you Google Chip and Herbert, we're climbing quickly, and we'll keep that going.
Yeah.
Just Google Chip and Herbert, and you got it.
Yeah. Well, cool, guys. I really appreciate y'all talking with us. Love you guys. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for the opportunity.
No, absolutely. We enjoyed talking more with you guys. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure.